Ever wish you could just, like, think your way to a better life?
Well, it's funny you should say that.
Yeah.
James Allen basically wrote the instruction manual.
No way.
We're going deep on his book, As a Man Thinketh.
This deep dive.
Yeah.
It's all about how this mind over matter thing actually works. Yeah.
And get this, it's not some vague, mystical mumbo-jumbo.
Okay.
Allen breaks it down practically, almost scientifically, you could say.
Interesting.
He's arguing our thoughts. They aren't just these fleeting things, you know.
Like-
They're more like seeds. They actually grow into our reality.
Okay, so no magic wands involved. Got it.
Right.
But I do like that he compares the mind to a garden.
It's a good one.
So walk me through this metaphor. Like, what are the weeds we need to clear out of our mental gardens to make room for those seeds to grow?
Well, think about it, the things that keep you stuck. Negative self-talk, crippling self-doubt, that constant nagging fear of failure.
Oh, man. Too real.
Those are the weeds right there. Choking the life out of your goals before they even have a chance to sprout.
Ouch. Those weeds sound way too familiar. I'm already feeling the urge to grab a mental weed whacker. But what about the good stuff? What are the fruits and flowers we should be planting instead?
It's about cultivating those inner strengths, honesty, perseverance, kindness, the good stuff.
Right.
And he doesn't see these as just personality traits. You know, they're more like building blocks of a truly fulfilling life.
It's like instead of just wishing for a better life, we need to build that internal foundation that actually supports that kind of life.
Right. That's it.
That need. But then how does this connect to our actual circumstances? Like, does Alan think we can just manifest $1 million just by thinking about it hard enough?
Not quite. He's not saying external factors don't matter at all.
Okay.
One of his most powerful lines is, circumstances don't make the man, they reveal him.
Okay, I need you to unpack that one. So it's not about, like, some cosmic reward system where good things happen to good people.
It's deeper than that. It's more like your situation isn't defining you, it's reflecting you.
Okay.
Like he uses the example of a dishonest employer, right?
Yeah.
They might have all this material wealth, but they could be driven by this constant fear and insecurity, which then leads to those dishonest actions.
Well, that is way more insightful than just assuming someone's successful because they're a good person.
It makes you think.
It really makes you think about what's really going on beneath the surface.
Yeah.
So if our outer world is basically a mirror of our inner world, how do we actually start making changes? Because it almost feels too simple, you know?
Right.
Like just think good thoughts and everything magically falls into place.
It's not magic. It's about shifting your focus.
Okay.
Imagine yourself as a sculptor,
Okay.
but instead of chiseling stone, you're shaping your life.
Wow.
Each thought, each choice, no matter how small, it adds another detail to the masterpiece.
Okay, I love that visual. But I think a lot of people, myself included, sometimes get stuck in this trap of, like, if I just think really hard about getting that promotion, it'll happen. So how's that different from what Alan's advocating for?
See, Alan would say that's not quite it. It's not about wishful thinking. It's about aligned action.
All right.
It's like he says, dream lofty dreams, and as you dream, so shall you become.
Become.
That's the key word there, become. You have to put in the work, the effort, to actually become the person who achieves those dreams.
So no more lottery ticket mentality.
Right.
It's more about understanding that achieving those big goals, it requires big effort.
Yes.
But also, that effort, it's got to be fueled by a clear vision of where you're actually headed.
Exactly. Like, take someone like Columbus.
Okay.
He had this crazy dream of reaching the Indies, but by sailing west.
Yeah.
Everyone thought he was nuts. But he clung to that vision. He was willing to face ridicule, risk everything, sacrifice it all, a chance to make that dream a reality.
And that's the thing about big dreams. They often demand those big sacrifices, don't they?
They do.
You have to be willing to step outside that comfort zone, maybe even face some storms along the way.
It's part of the journey.
Speaking of storms, Alan talks about the importance of serenity. So it's not all about hustling and grinding 24/7, is it?
Not at all. He saw calmness as a superpower. It's not about being passive, though. It's about cultivating this unshakable inner peace, even when things around you are completely chaotic.
It's like instead of getting tossed around by every emotional wave, you become this source of strength and stability.
Right.
Like a tree that can withstand any storm, you know?
Exactly. And that inner strength, it directly impacts how we handle those challenges.
Okay.
Alan uses this really striking image of a sheltering rock to describe the power of serenity.
A sheltering rock.
So it's like no matter how wild those waves get,
Right.
rock it remains unmoved. That's the kind of resilience we're talking about.
Okay, I love that visual. But then how does that translate to, like, real life?
Right.
It's easy to, like, say, be like a rock.
Sure.
But what about in those moments where things feel genuinely overwhelming? You know?
Well, Alan would say it all comes back to choice. We can't always control what happens to us,
Right.
but we can control how we respond.
Okay.
And it's really, he's basically flipping the script on, like, victimhood,
Yeah.
saying you're not defined by your circumstances.
Right.
You're revealed by them.
So it's a call to action.
Mhm.
It's empowering.
It is.
Instead of saying, this is happening to me, it's about asking,
Right.
okay, how am I choosing to think about this?
Yes.
And how is that actually shaping my experience?
100%. It puts you back in the driver's seat, even when the road gets bumpy.
Exactly. And it's not about, like, denying reality or anything.
Right.
It's about choosing a more empowering lens to view things through.
Yes, and remember, Alan isn't saying this is easy. He acknowledges that it takes conscious effort, discipline even,
Right.
to challenge those really deeply ingrained thought patterns, you know?
Yeah.
He even uses the word extirpating negative thoughts, which, it's intense.
Like we're performing mental surgery almost.
Exactly.
But it makes sense because you can't just, like, slap a Band-Aid on a deeply rooted weed and expect it to just magically disappear.
No,
You got to get to the root of the problem.
you do.
So let's say we're ready to, like, roll up our sleeves
Okay.
and start weeding that mental garden.
Let's do it.
Where do we even begin?
Well, Alan was all about self-analysis. He said, man can only thus become by discovering within himself the laws of thought.
Oh.
So basically, you have to become a scientist of your own experience.
Like a thought detective almost.
Exactly.
Paying attention to our thought patterns, our habits,
Yeah.
and then, like, connecting the dots to see how they're actually showing up in our lives. Which really makes you realize how much power we actually have, but also how much of it we kind of unconsciously give away.
All the time. It's true. And he even encourages us, like even those small everyday occurrences.
Yeah.
He's like, treat these as opportunities to
Good.
grow. Like, what can we learn from our reactions, our successes, but also our failures? It's about becoming this conscious creator
Instead of
an unconscious reactor.
Okay, I love that. So no more drifting through life on autopilot.
Yeah.
Time to, like, wake up, take control of the control panel.
Exactly.
But it's interesting because this all, like, ties back to taking responsibility for our own lives,
Well,
right?
it does.
Which can feel daunting to some people,
Sure.
but also incredibly empowering.
It is. Alan believed that once we realize we are the makers of ourselves,
Yeah.
we're no longer at the mercy of fate.
Right. And it's not about, like, blaming ourselves
No.
for everything that goes wrong in our lives.
Of course not.
It's about recognizing
Right.
that we have more agency than we realize.
Yes.
It's about saying, okay, I actually have the power to choose something different.
Precisely. Alan said, a man cannot directly choose his circumstances, but he can choose his thoughts, and so indirectly yet surely shape his circumstances.
So it's a long game.
It is.
We might not be able to change everything overnight,
Right.
but we can change our thinking. And that will have ripple effects.
It will?
It's about playing the long game, not expecting those overnight transformations.
Right.
And I think what's cool about this is that it's not just about, like, achieving external success, right?
No.
It's about building a life of meaning and purpose.
Yes.
And that inner peace we were talking about earlier.
Right. He pointed out that even people who achieve what looks like amazing things, great things,
Yeah.
they can still fall back into what he calls weakness and wretchedness
Really?
if they're not careful with their thoughts. So it's an ongoing practice.
Like tending a garden. It requires that constant care and attention.
All the time. You can't just plant a few seeds and expect this thriving garden overnight.
Right.
It requires consistent effort, but you would argue the rewards are well worth it.
So it's not about, like, some massive garden makeover.
Right.
It's more about just becoming more aware of what we're already, like, cultivating up there.
Yes.
And then making those conscious choices about what we actually want to grow.
Exactly. And, you know, Alan was really big on this idea
Yeah.
that we don't attract what we want.
We attract what we are. I've heard that before.
Right. And so if you want to attract those positive experiences, we have to cultivate that positive internal landscape.
Yeah.
And that takes effort,
Yeah.
just like tending a garden.
Speaking of effort, there's this quote from Alan that really stuck with me. He said, "In all human affairs, there are efforts and there are results. And the strength of the effort is the measure of the result." It's a good reminder that we don't just magically manifest our dream life just by thinking about it.
Right. Yeah.
We have to put in the work.
He was really challenging this whole idea of like luck and chance, which so often overshadows
Right.
the actual effort behind success.
Yeah.
You know? He said people look at those who have made it and they think,
They're so lucky.
but what they don't see, all those hours of unseen effort, the setbacks, the sheer grit, the determination
Right.
it took to get there.
It's like that saying, it's the overnight success that took like 10 years to happen. We tend to just compare ourselves to these highlight reels
Right.
without actually acknowledging the behind-the-scenes grind.
Exactly. And Alan really wanted to like pull back the curtain on that
Yeah.
and show that success, no matter how big or small, it's a result of that focused effort.
Not some lucky streak.
Exactly.
So instead of constantly comparing ourselves to others, it's more about like focusing on our own growth,
Yes.
celebrating our own wins no matter how small,
Yes.
and then also, learning from the setbacks because those are inevitable too.
Of course, everyone faces obstacles, right? It's all about how we choose to respond to them.
Yeah, that's a good point. We can't always control what happens to us,
No.
but we can control how we respond.
We can.
So how do we cultivate that resilience, that mental fortitude?
Yeah.
How do we stay focused on our goals, especially when things get tough?
Well, Alan believed that having that clear purpose was crucial,
Okay.
especially when you're, navigating those inevitable storms. He said those who have no central purpose in their life fall an easy prey to petty worries, fears, troubles, and self-pityings.
Wow.
And it's true. Without that guiding star, it's so easy to get, pulled off course.
It's like trying to, sail a ship without a rudder. You're just
Yeah.
at the mercy of the wind and the waves. But how do we even find that sense of purpose?
Right.
What if someone's listening and they're feeling like completely lost at sea?
Well, Alan would probably suggest a little introspection, looking inward. He really believed
Yeah.
that each of us, we possess these unique gifts and talents.
Right.
Us waiting to be unearthed,
Unveiled,
Yeah,
shared with the world.
exactly.
So it's about tapping into that inner wisdom,
Yes.
listening to that quiet voice. It's like, this is who you are and this is what you were meant to do.
And sometimes that voice, it gets drowned out.
Ah.
The noise of the world, our doubts and insecurities, sometimes even other people's expectations, right?
It's so easy to get caught up in that. So how do we turn up the volume on that inner guidance system?
Well, Alan was a big advocate for solitude, for reflection. He believed that creating that space for quiet contemplation,
Yeah.
that's what allows that inner wisdom to emerge.
He even went so far as to call dreamers the saviors of the world.
He did. He said,
That's a pretty important job.
right. He wrote, "The dreamers are the saviors of the world. As the visible world is sustained by the invisible, so men, through all their trials and sins and sordid vocations, are nourished by the beautiful visions of their solitary dreamers."
Wow. It's a powerful reminder that our inner world shapes the outer world.
Yeah.
So those moments we spend daydreaming.
Good.
Visualizing our goals, those aren't just frivolous distractions, right?
So.
They're actually essential for building that better future for ourselves,
Right.
but also for the world around us.
He would say that's exactly it. It's about having that faith in ourselves, in our ability to create something meaningful with our lives.
To everyone listening, what if,
Yes.
instead of just focusing on like changing those external circumstances directly,
Okay.
what if you spent this next week nurturing just one specific positive quality within yourself?
I love that.
Courage, kindness, discipline, whatever resonates.
Yes.
Pay attention to how even that small shift
Right.
in your inner world
Yes.
starts to influence your external reality. You might just be surprised by the results.